Will they, like anyone who's gonna, I mean, I've had my work ripped off plenty, like everybody's going to
Yeah.
at some point, you know, if you're doing it right, people are going to start ripping your work off. And the people who, like the really egregious people who are going to copy your work and style and try and sell themselves as a client of you, they do not need your tools to do that.
Thank you for being a pal.
What's up, pals, and welcome back to another episode of Pentool Pals, a friendly graphic design podcast between two graphic designers. My name's Cole from Cautionary Design.
And I'm Canvas Cam with Canvas Design Company. Welcome back to the podcast. Cole, what's going on, dude?
Not much, man. Just get through the week. Crazy stuff happening. Really excited about a couple projects on my plate. And yeah, how's everything with you?
It's good, man. I've got a few branding projects on my plate right now. Illustration project that's kind of going well. I think so. The first run, the client didn't like a few certain things, so I have to go back in, but it's kind of difficult because the way I had illustrated it, it was kind of the best way to do it, if that makes sense. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult going in, but it'll be fun just trying to figure out this illustration. I have to blend a Spartan with a lion in the chest area, and it's going to be interesting. But other than that, everything's going smoothly.
That's sick, dude. I'm really stoked. That shirt you're wearing is pretty sick.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I got this shirt from Kate Libby, Scout Lib on Instagram. Let's check it out. She came out with these, and she still has these for sale on her website. Just saying. But yeah, you guys should go check it out. She's a phenomenal artist. She's done some stuff for us for Pal of the Week.
Yeah, she also did a super cool Pentool Pal of the Week artwork for us. So yeah, we're looking for a Pal of the Week.
Yes.
If anyone's interested, if you have some free time and are interested in getting involved with the podcast, the best way to do so is to make some artwork, post it, tag us. It could be literally anything that you want. Get creative with it, and we're stoked to see what you guys come up with.
Yeah, and that's just one way to better get involved with the podcast. We love sharing your artwork. We love when you guys do it. It's one thing that, makes the podcast function. And yeah, we really appreciate when you guys submit your art. So keep that going.
Beautiful. Well, this week we've got an amazing guest. He's a super talented illustrator and also founder of True Grit Texture Supply Company, Andrew Fairclough.
Yeah, very excited to have him on. I have damn near everything that True Grit has to offer outside of the tools for the programs that I don't use. So yeah, super excited to have him on. He's just a phenomenal illustrator on top of that. Some of the stuff he's come up with has just blown my mind. Like there's this one illustration of a man's torso and shoulders, and his face is popping out, and inside the face there's like a galaxy, and that shit just blows my mind. The level of creativity that goes into that stuff. I'm excited to dip into his process a little bit and see just how he navigates, see his layer system and all that stuff. I'm always really, really intrigued when a designer shows his process. So I really hope he does that for this one. So
yeah, he's insane. He's worked with an amazing, crazy rotisserie of clients and artists and bands and brands, and it's truly insane. So super stoked to get him on the pod, and without further ado, let's get him in the chat.
Hell yeah. There he is.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Andrew, how you doing, man?
Good. You?
Good. It's good to see you. Good to jump on here. Thank you for being on an episode of Pentool Pals.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry for the technical difficulties.
No worries, man. It happens all the time. But
I've got can you hear me okay? I've got a microphone I can use if that's better.
I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah, same here.
If you'd like to use a microphone, feel free.
No, totally. It'll take a few minutes to set up. So
yeah, no, I can hear you perfectly right now.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a long distance Pentool Pals episode, huh? You're all the way in Australia?
I am, yeah.
Nice.
Pentool Pals,
Worldwide. Why?
Pentool Pals.
Worldwide.
But you also work in LA, is that correct?
I did. I was living in LA for 4 years, and I moved back here last year.
Very cool.
So yeah, it was just the pandemic just became too chaotic, and Australia was pandemic free. So it was,
I don't blame you.
It was, which is not the case now, but at the time it was like, we've maybe done our time in LA. Maybe it's time to move on. But,
for sure. Yeah, because
I'll get back there this year.
For sure. Yeah, because I was like, I'm pretty sure he's like in LA. And then we got to talking, and then come to find out you were back in Australia. But
yeah. So, I'll get back later this year.
Yeah. Was Kindred Studio started in LA or Australia? What was like the beginning of the journey for you and with design?
That was Australia. Yeah, that was like, I want to say like 2005. I was working in an ad agency in Sydney, and I was just doing little bits and pieces of freelance for, like a friend had a skate clothing company, and, like everybody's starting stuff. And around that time, I quit my job and moved to Whistler for a couple of years just to go snowboarding and kind of like start freelancing full time, really. Like I didn't want to go and work in like a snowboard shop or whatever. I'd done that before, and around that time I sort of had the opportunity, like I guess my dream client at that time was working for snowboard brands, doing board graphics and ad campaigns and what it was all print back then, but around that time I kind of had the opportunity to I kind of hooked up with these guys in Southern California that had a small design studio, and they needed help. They had a lot of sort of snowboard clients in particular. They were ex-pro snowboarders, and I just started helping them out, doing branding and board graphics, and landed a couple of big clients that way. And it all kind of went from there. And so I spent 2 years in Whistler, and back and forth down to Vancouver quite a lot. And it just kind of led to full-time freelancing, really. I just, it really was just kind of jumping into the fire. Like I had no other prospective income. I wasn't allowed to work in Canada at the time. It was sort of like I was running my freelance business from Australia while, vacationing.
There you go.
Canada. But that kind of led to a sponsorship with the Canadian company, like a snowboard apparel company that was actually founded by Chip Wilson, who founded Lululemon. So before he did that, he had a sort of, foundational heritage snowboard brand called West Beach, which was sort of Canada's big, it was a big deal back in the day. And
awesome.
So I was creative director there for a few years, but more in a freelance capacity, really. I was back and forth to Vancouver a lot, and back to Sydney, and
hell yeah.
So
that's awesome.
That was how it all kicked off, really.
That was a good full spectrum of like.
I love it.
Let's go back towards like the beginning part of it a little bit. So was snowboarding something that you were like really interested in as a sport that led you to want to like create the snowboard graphics, or you're already somewhat in the industry at the time?
It was. I mean, I actually studied business at university. And like majoring in tourism, and I kind of, my rationale for that, I mean, I guess I just like lived to surf and snowboard when I was younger, and still live to surf, and I kind of saw that tourism angle as a way to kind of live an eternal winter, I guess, at some point. And, like straight out of university, I ended up working for a ski travel company, and very quickly I just realized I just loathed that industry, like the travel industry. Like
humble beginnings.
Yeah, it was just like, why did I spend 3 years at uni doing this?
Yeah.
Like, I could have just left high school and done this. This is such a terrible industry. I mean, it just wasn't for
crazy.
me. A lot of it was very sales driven, I guess.
Yeah,
and that just wasn't. It wasn't for me. It was high pressure. There was some, my employer was a bit sketchy, and they definitely pushed the boundaries, to my mind, of morality at times with some of their customers and clients. And I don't know, I just kind of wanted to get out of it. And so I kind of quit that, and the first time around moved to Whistler for, again, like 18 months, 2 years, and just was like a total snowboard bum. And whilst doing that, I realized, like, I kind of connected with a lot of friends who are graphic designers and illustrators, and I'd always like been really good at drawing and design in school, but sort of got talked out of going into that industry by a high school careers advisor who,
of course you did.
It's
crazy, like the misconception that people have, to where they think they have to go to college or university to do something in the art world. It's like I did a few years of college, and a buddy of mine who graduated from a college here in California, he ended up graduating and telling me, like, don't waste your money, like, go get your street miles. And we say that on the podcast or all the time. It's like, it's the street miles is what's going to get you the experience in the industry. It's not like going and spending all this money. Now, there are designers who definitely can benefit from going to college and doing all that stuff. I'm not knocking that, but it's one of those things where it's like, artists can survive without going to a university to get, experience and all that stuff.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think some people just like have an eye for it too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I applied for college to go back and do design at college, and just didn't. Sort of in the meantime, I got a, like an entry level position in an ad agency, just like, production stuff, really. Like, they called it a design job, but it was ad production for real estate.
That's very similar to what I was doing, so I hear you.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's a pretty common, there's a lot of work like that out there, let me say that. But it kind of worked out well, because the agency I was working for, they were growing at the time. And they kind of went from doing, they kind of had two divisions, doing this like down and dirty, just sort of, local, newspaper print advertising for all the big real estate groups in Sydney. But also, at the same time, they were working with big developers on, there was like a condo boom in Sydney at the time. And, I kind of got, I guess they saw something in me, and I very quickly, sort of over the space of a couple of years, went from like junior designer to senior designer and art director. Nice. And I went back and did some other I went to ad school and did all that sort of stuff, and did some branding courses and stuff like that. I wasn't completely unguided, but largely kind of self-taught to a certain extent. So
I had to learn on the job. I was also in advertising for about 4 years, and it's good to have that experience, because it'll definitely teach you how to navigate when you do decide to go freelance. Like, if I didn't have all that knowledge, I probably wouldn't have been able to survive as a freelance artist.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I would become friends with the suits at the agency, and like, how do you invoice? How do you cost things? Blah, 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 and you'd be one part horrified, because you'd realize you were making $40 an hour, and they were hiring you out at like $800 a day.
Yeah, damn.
On photo shoots or whatever. But it definitely taught me a lot about pricing and how to deal with clients, and presenting to clients.
Dude,
that's such a big part
particularly, Yeah, and I think like if you are, I don't know. I mean, I think it just depends on on designer or illustrators' skill sets as to what path they take. But like for me, I would have been an absolute shit show if I'd gone straight from college into freelancing or whatever without like just kind of like learning to stand in a, you know, in a boardroom and present to like a multi-millionaire, you know,
right?
like
It's a huge thing that's actually not talked about enough, is how if you're going to run into the world of freelance, that you're actually going to do a whole different section of the business that you may have never actually been in a part of before. So like it could be an amazing illustrator, but if you can't speak or communicate well to a client, or if you can't extract information needed prior to like creating artworks or whatever, before like you're in an agency, maybe you're just given a brief and everything's already laid out for you and you're creating it. So now you're actually just like wearing all the hats that you may have not had previous.
100%.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like learning to sell your work and even explain your work in a way that clients can understand, and you know, if you can deal with like, you know, the head of a, you know, multi-billion-dollar property development company and like explain your work to them, then, you know, it's going to be a lot easier when you get to working on, you know, smaller freelance clients and stuff like that, and people who are probably more excited to be working with you.
Oh, for sure.
If we can be honest, you know.
And for you, it's probably less intimidating to take on like, you know, a smaller client because like you feel more confident about it. As a freelance artist, dude, taking on like a big client, it's like kind of scary because there's so many high expectations of you when you're working with like when you're going from here to a smaller client. It's got to be like more comforting, more comfortable, you know, navigating pricing and all that stuff.
Yeah, and also I think if there's like, you know, I think with smaller clients you have like a lot more rapport. I mean, that corporate world, that's like a whole different, you know, it's a lot of pressure and a lot of you know, I mean, at least I found, you know, there was a lot of pressure internally. You know, you've got a whole team working on a big pitch, and you know, just I don't know, corporates, they're very, you know, that world, I found it very intimidating.
For sure.
Because they can make your life misery if they want to.
Totally.
And it's not always your fault. I mean, that's a large reason of why I sort of got off that that freight train, you know, the I don't know, advertising, and I believe it's even worse these days. But you know, the idea that you could be sitting there with your whole weekend planned ahead of you at 4 p.m. on Friday, and then you know, the head of accounts walks into the studio and is like, "Hey, we're pitching Qantas. Everybody is working weekends for the next month," and you're like, "Jeez. You idiots know this is a political pitch, right? Like they have no intention of leaving their current agency. Like, yeah, but we just have to, you know, it's great that we've got a seat at the table." Like, oh man,
great.
Yeah, so I got fed up with that, and like talking to friends who are now, you know, big creative directors in big ad groups and stuff like that. Like they're still dealing with that stuff. It's gotten worse, you know, because it's so much more competitive now, and you know, you've got tech involved, and yeah, it's wild. But some people thrive on that too, you know.
Yeah,
it's
for
like,
sure. Well, the difference between
plenty of people who like love the game, and you know, that's great.
One of the big differences too when it comes to the corporate world and like the freelance world is in corporate, they don't necessarily celebrate being an individual artist or having like your own particular style. You know, sometimes it fits better to have a versatile designer that has many hats and can do all this different tricks and whatever. But then as a freelancer, you come out and you have your own style, and it's great, and it seems like people continue to hire you for that particular thing, and that rolls into it. And it seems like you've definitely found that style, and I'm curious how that kind of began. Was that during your process at the agency, or was that like at an earlier age and you were kind of doing that on the side anyways?
Yeah, it was, like at an earlier age, but also, while at the agency. I mean, to a certain extent, I think that a lot of that was kind of like influences at that stage. Like a lot of my influences were more, like essentially skateboarding and snowboarding artists, like street art, that kind of stuff, like artists like, Evan Heckox and Michael Leon and all those guys that sort of like were working for Chocolate Skateboards and Girl and all those sort of brands back in the day. So, screen print heavy, a lot of use of halftone and bitmap imagery, a lot of collage art, a lot of hand drawn, like particularly with Evan Heckox, hand drawn work. So, and I would just try everything. I mean, it was just like, I don't know, a mishmash of different styles. And, I think I could probably go back today and look at a bunch of that stuff and be like, oh, that's ripping off so-and-so. That's ripping off, like.
Yeah, I feel like that always is how anyone
learn.
starts, right? Is like, you gotta know what you like before you're able to make it your own.
Totally. There's a handful of things I look back on my work and it's like, there's a little bit of Dave Quiggle in there and all that stuff. But to kind of shift gears a little bit, like you have such like an amazing style. And, it's like, I look at some of your work, like there's this one piece that you just recently posted. I think you posted a few times where, it's like a cosmic thing where there's like a silhouette or like a body, the shoulder, but the face is coming out. And then there's like a space in there.
Oh yeah.
I admire the hell out of your work, your illustration work, because it's like, it's so like, it's kind of outlandish in a lot of ways. But yeah, no, like, how long did it take you to kind of perfect that style? And when did you have this like click in your brain where it's like, all right, I'm going to try to really do some weird shit?
I mean, I think that was probably, that style probably came about, I started working on that kind of thing probably about 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
My style evolved over time. It sort of like largely came from that I guess just the pen and ink style largely came from just a love of like old advertising clip art from the sort of 50s, 60s, 70s. My mum worked at a local newspaper in the town I grew up in, and after school I would go and hang out with the graphic designer and annoy him with every question under the sun about how he worked. And back then that was sort of, I think they were probably only just moving to digital at that point, and they had these huge like in my mind they were like A0 sized scrapbooks full of clip art. Nice. And like they literally had a pile of them, like nearly gold. 6 feet high.
Damn.
And I would just flick through them, and they just, I don't know, even then it felt very nostalgic to me. So that was that's one part of the influence, I guess.
Okay.
And then I kind of been working in that style or trying to recreate that style for a really long time, and over time developed it. But
you're fucking phenomenal.
Then sort of conceptually it was more, I don't know, I just again, it's just like a lot of different styles and artists and concepts, and it didn't really, I guess kind of like more psychedelic art and surrealism and that's kind of what came to, it's combining those styles. It doesn't really look like either or. It's just like a combination of one style with another movement of art that is traditionally done in a very different style. So I don't know, it's a long work in progress
for sure. So it's funny, I make a joke on this podcast all the time because I have damn near everything that you sell through True Grit Texture Supply.
Oh,
So
really?
for
Yeah,
everybody
right.
listening, I mention True Grit Texture Supply on this podcast all the time. And it's definitely, I probably use your tools for damn near everything that I do. But I make this joke all the time to her. So when we talk about it, I'll go like, sponsor us, True Grit Texture Supply. But I didn't
Oh,
realize,
right.
I didn't realize until like, I didn't realize until recently, is True Grit Texture Supply just you? It's just like a one man operation.
Pretty much. I've got a few people. I have a friend in Canada who does customer support,
Okay, gotcha.
and a design assistant in Australia who helps out with production of products and
Okay,
campaigns and stuff like that, more in a freelance capacity. And she used to be in LA as well. We
gotcha,
all kind of moved back here around the same time.
gotcha,
But it's I work with an ad agency in LA. So yeah, I
gotcha.
mean, it's predominantly, there's no full-time employees other than me, but work in a freelance capacity quite a
Yeah,
lot
yeah, for
with
sure.
other artists and collaborators. So
Awesome.
yeah,
And you came
I've
out with
always kind
something
of
new
been about
today, right? Is
yes,
Clip Studio Paint?
new and old, yes. So
Okay,
it's converting, basically just been porting a bunch of products over to use in Clip Studio Paint, which
okay.
if you don't know, it's an app. It's kind of like Photoshop for graphic novelists and comic artists.
Oh,
It's
okay.
used predominantly by comic artists. It's a really great app. It's kind of like, it's almost like Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign all rolled into one.
Oh, no way. Okay.
But it has a really, I think comic artists tend to really love it
Yeah.
for its brush engine. The brush engine's been really good for a long time, a lot longer than Photoshop's, I guess. And it used to be called Manga Studio.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I
It's a
used to have that.
Japanese app.
I
Yeah,
used to
yeah,
have
yeah.
that.
So
Yeah.
they rebranded, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But yeah, we just had like a lot of requests over, I would say a good portion of my day for the last 3 years has been fielding questions on social media
Gotcha.
about when we're going to make stuff for Clip Studio.
There you
So but they've sort of really improved their brush engine recently. So
Nice.
it was kind of time.
Hell yeah.
I totally admire that you were able to take your style of art and then fill a gap within the industry, which is like
Totally.
how artists like Cam or myself will be able to use something to enhance our everyday work through something.
Oh, dude, I use Vector Savior like every fucking day.
Oh, really?
That I use the Vector, I think it's called Hardware, but
Yep.
I'll use
Yep.
those things all of the time just to kind
Yep.
of so much so I use your tools so much so that my friends who are sisters, they both got me gift cards for Christmas for you. So
Oh, really? Awesome.
at this point I just pick up tools just if I don't have them, and I'll figure out a way to use them. So I have so many.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten to the point now where I'm making tools that I wouldn't necessarily use in my personal work,
Yeah.
except to experiment with them and just have a bit of fun. And
There you go.
like I don't know. I mean, a lot of the tools, they're just like they're almost a way to just, I think, expand your style and experiment.
Yeah.
It's almost like forced experimentation, which I think is really a really nice way to work sometimes, particularly if you're like, when you're a bit younger and you're still trying to find your style.
Mm-hmm.
It can be really helpful. But I mean, I've been fortunate to see plenty of artists who sort of supported True Grit right from the start.
Yeah.
And now that it's 5 years old, I've seen some of these guys and girls go from like early stages of their career finding their style to like full blown just going crazy.
Yeah.
That must be so
landing
cool to
big
see.
clients. It's so cool. Like John Cutt, I don't know if you know that guy, the High Road Design.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so we just did a tutorial with him, and he's just such a boss. Like his
He
story is
uses a
just
lot
so
of
cool.
that,
He
that
like
grit. It's really cool.
he does.
Yeah,
Yeah,
his style is just
He does have he has that hand painterly kind of style, similar to like that roughness that you have in a lot of your work. So it's cool that the connection is there.
yeah, totally.
yeah. No, he's awesome. And Blaze Brooks,
He's
he's an illustrator
amazing. Oh
from
my gosh.
from New York. Like, and in like 5 years, he's just, you know, his work was always great when I first became aware of him, but just like seeing how his work has progressed has just been
Yeah.
so cool. And yeah, lots of, you know, Dohee Kwan, and we did a tutorial with her
Very
her
cool.
work as well. Just seeing that, yeah, it's really fun.
For sure.
It's kind of cool to.
Can I show you something I just finished recently for a brand that I did their branding kit for? I used Vector
Totally.
Savior through the entire thing. And
Awesome.
here, I'll share this real quick and then we'll get back to it. But yeah, I did this whole thing basically using Vector Savior and a lot of
wow.
other things. But it's just kind of riddled through here.
Yeah.
I did all of this texturing down here,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, I used it for half tones and just kind of like a something kind of here in the background.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, like exactly what you
awesome.
were saying just a few minutes ago was like the elevation of my work was definitely through the tools that, you know, I use. And it just kind of pushed me to keep, you know, getting better and figuring out something else and different ways to use your tools and stuff like that too. But yeah, so this is going to go on the inside of a box.
Cool.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So when people open up the packaging, this will be kind of what they see. This is a kind of a CBD brand, but yeah, dude, no.
Oh yeah, right. Gotcha.
But yeah.
Yep. Launching brains into outer space.
Oh yeah. So what made you like, what was the beginning of True Grit? Like, did you just go like, all right, I'm creating these for myself, why not sell these? Did you see like an immediate demand for texturing in a graphic design space?
It was a bit of I wouldn't say something done on a whim, but I got approached by Skillshare to create a Skillshare class, and I did that, and a lot of it was just kind of divulging like all my old school tricks and tips for making, like hand making textures, and then how to sort of digitize them and use them in your work. And it was very kind of basic. You know, a lot of even some of the digital techniques shown in there now, they're you know, they're kind of outdated, I guess. But it was hugely successful, and I just had a lot of students asking me like, hey, have you ever thought of selling any of your brushes or textures? And yeah, I just kind of thought, oh, that's not a bad idea. Like, I have this huge archive of years worth of like, you know, half built brushes and textures, and sort of vaguely organized but not too organized. And yeah, I just set myself like a bit of a task over the space of a couple of months to just, you know, organize things, transfer some of them into a more usable format, like brushes. You know, I have like halftone sheets that I would just use in, I'd made a couple of brushes with, but then predominantly a lot of the time they would just get dumped into a PSD file and masked in. And so, you know, converting them into more usable formats or expanding the collection of brushes and stuff like that. And to my surprise, it really took off. I was really nervous about launching it. I didn't know what, you know, people would think, or whether people would want to even use pre-made products. But I just kind of knew that they were really useful to me, and it was, you know, a shame to have them sitting there on the shelf, you know, only being used by one person, when, you know, I kind of knew that like I can use them in my style, but what can other people use them for? And
for sure, you
know, I definitely had some thoughts in the back of my mind of like, what if this means that everyone just comes along and rips off my style? And
right, of course,
like,
of course,
that's like the initial
anyone who wants to. Well, they like anyone who's gonna. I mean, I've had my work ripped off plenty. Like everybody's going to at some point. You know, if you're doing it right, people are going to start ripping your work off. And the people who like the really egregious people who are going to copy your work and style and try and sell themselves as a client of you, they do not need your tools to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
replicators, they can do it without your help, that is for sure. So there's always going to be a few people like that out there anyway, but I mean the vast majority of people, it's like I was saying before, it's just really cool to see the different ways people use the tools. And like I've learned a lot in my own practice purely by seeing how other people use the tools, and I'm like, oh man, yeah, okay, why aren't I doing it that way? I could be doing that way more now. Sure. So yeah,
almost backwards, like the tools have now been used by so many other people that it's influenced yourself. It's like a full 360.
That's cool. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I think this is actually a perfect time to roll into maybe showing some of your artwork, and we can kind of just run through it and talk about it.
Okay, so this is an editorial illustration for Paste magazine for an article on Harry Anslinger, who was he was an architect of, a pretty deep running propaganda campaign for the, I guess they were the Federal Bureau of Narcotics back then, but eventually became the DEA.
Okay.
And it was a propaganda campaign, sort of, had a lot of racism and misinformation in it, discrediting the use of cannabis, and it resulted in prohibition in the US and throughout the world. It was kind of the test case, or the, the propaganda that he put out was sort of used in other countries to ban cannabis. So he's kind of seen as a pretty, I actually, I guess in the pro cannabis world, this story is really well known, but I hadn't heard of it. It's a pretty crazy, crazy story. But the idea here, I mean, I guess process one, I don't know if I had the sketches working around actually. Pencils, oh yeah, here we go.
Oh, so sick. That's so cool to see.
So that's that was the basic idea. I wanted to kind of, the story very much focused on, that he was an architect of lies. It was a very well planned out strategy of formulating lies, formulating bogus scientific reports, using racist propaganda to, basically discredit, not only the production of cannabis itself, but the business, ultimately the business of it. So, my idea was a lie detector machine, a typewriter, and just these sort of, nondescript hands toiling away in a dark sort of office space. So
that's super cool. I always try to find some sort of real reference.
Exactly.
Like this.
I'm very unconfident with my concept sometimes, and so I'll just get on iStock and I'll be like,
I'm right there with you.
At the shittiest possible level, if I was making a meme about this, like does compositing these crappy stock photos convey the idea? If you can convey the idea in a stock photo before even going to like a rough sketch, or some of it's kind of like, can I find references? Like, is this a way to present the idea? Just an overhead shot in its most basic form. Does that work as a composition? Which ultimately I decided it didn't. But and that's kind of where I wound up with these sketches. So
yeah, it's funny how like in the early days of designing, I always felt like I had to overcompensate with creating something that was so perfect beforehand. Same. But then I feel like even now, when the more confident you are, I feel like you're able to create these meme-like or really remedial design sketches that help ourselves, like before we even jump into something like full with full certainty that at least from
Yeah, totally.
100%.
And I mean, I guess going into, I can probably show you a second project that's a little bit of a cautionary tale in terms of like going a little bit too far with your initial concepts. But we'll come back to that in a minute.
Sure.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the finished product. So with this one, you know, like, I think maybe the first step was I maybe like drew out maybe the basic shapes in Illustrator, but you know, the main probably the most daunting part of this was just getting the hands right, because drawing hands is hard. I really needed to, you know, for me at this stage, and still so, I can't just sit there and draw hands straight out of my brain. So you know, pulling references, you know, doing this was kind of partly traced, partly not. I used this shutter. I think I bought this Shutterstock photo with a reference license, and
even
just
with
kind of went
that one,
there.
it's like so blurry. Like I'm so amazed that you're able to use something like that to be able to get something like this.
Yeah, I mean,
so much
I'll
imagination still needed.
I'll play around a lot with you know, levels and curves to kind of bring out like the really obvious shadows and stuff like that, and that kind of thing, so that I can really, you know, figure out where to put my feathered shading and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, this, like, I mean, I guess what you can probably gather so far is, you know, it's a really cobbled together, almost like you know, collage approach to putting an image like this together. So you know, that's kind of where that starts. Eventually that gets bitmapped into a bitmap TIFF image, but
it's so funny because like there was a point in my early days as an illustrator to where, you know, I thought I had to be completely original with everything, and you know, it's like it was almost like, you know, forbidden that, you know, you use reference and stuff like that, and that's just poor teachings from my dad, who was also an illustrator, who, you know, whatever. But you know, reference for anything is just so, it's a part of it, you know, it's a part of the entire process to, you know, get things, you know, done, because people will look at it and go like, well, you know, your hands aren't right, you know, this typewriter thing is a little off. And so it's like it's mainly like a level of security for yourself, you know, to get everything well proportioned and looking correct.
I've always thought of it as like someone walking into a tattoo parlor, and if they wanted someone to draw like the body from scratch or to draw it from their mind, like the end of the day, they just want to make sure that their proportions are correct.
100%
of it. And
totally. They don't care how it gets done. Yeah. And I mean, that's, you know, that's a big thing in, you know, with editorial design, illustration too. It's like pretty tight turnaround. You don't have a lot of time to mess around. And, you know, once you get that pencil right, you kind of want to get going from there, and just, you know, particularly with this one, because it's like there's a lot of detail here, there's a lot of concepts, and it kind of helps to lean on references. So, you know, draw the hands, output them into I think that's just like maybe I think I've just dropped that in as a layered PSD file. And then, you know, for the lie detector typewriter, I've set up these where are we here? Where this grid is? Oh, there we go. Yeah, so I set up a grid so that you know, kind of a custom grid.
The grid is cool because it like the grid is cool because it like bends with the paper.
Folds with it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think I specifically drew that up so that I could use it to, I think these leaves, these weed leaves here are, maybe I used, I don't remember how I did that, but I think I'm pretty sure I used a envelope distort for that. So I I used the grid to draw I drew the leaf vector, then drew a grid like a rectangular shape in the grid, and used envelope distort to reshape it. You can see the original leaf there. So yeah, I've got this. Let me see if I can bring this reference image to the top. Maybe I'll just turn everything else off. Yeah, so I use this like old typewriter to draw the keys, and then
that is so cool, dude.
Yeah, referencing just like
the little
I just
and
kind of
buttons and
freehand drew everything else, right? Like it's on a grid, so it's in Illustrator, and just referencing all these old things. You know, like there's probably other reference images lurking around elsewhere of like old Moog synthesizers and stuff like that. Like I love playing with and drawing old analog synthesizers, so I used a lot of that kind of visual language. Where are we here? Dials copy, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I got into this is an unnecessary
insane.
level of detail, really.
The fact that that's a design within a design.
Oh, for sure.
It's for my own personal nerdy gratification. Let's face it.
This is why you're the master of your craft, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even the difference from this sketch to what I saw as your final, like I see you have your full vectored weed leaves, but then with your final, you have like the actual line work marks
exactly
scratching through, and it's that small detail that's just unbelievable.
It's just a reference, right? Like, But I guess because I wanted to get the shape. I mean, it's a hard. Like, I could not possibly. Actually, I must have transformed these in Photoshop. Looking at that now, because that's not right. But you just kind of want to get it right. Like, it would be fine to just slap it on like that. But I mean, I guess the point of showing you this is that like I couldn't hand draw this in Photoshop. Like getting all these dials right and that kind of thing. I mean, for me, I could definitely do a much more simple version of this, for sure. But once you kind of commit to like, okay, the hands are going to have this level of detail, then everything else has to have that same level of detail. And I think I kind of felt like that was important in the storytelling of the image. So that goes from there into, I sort of keep my files in like what have I got here? Yeah, so I've got my like vector files in here, and then in my images, I've got my like composites. So what's that? That is
that's incredible, dude.
Do you have like an extra flash drive or hard drive that you back up your files? Because my computer is almost completely tapped out, and I can only imagine how much more each of your file sizes are.
I mean, this isn't that big, I don't think. It's like 500 meg.
Oh, dude, I've got some serious firepower on mine. I've got like a 2 terabyte hard drive inside my computer, then an external hard drive, and then an additional terabyte to back up my computer.
Yeah, I'm the same. I've got like 4 terabytes of backup and maybe a 1 terabyte SSD and another terabyte internally that I don't use. I just keep it, just for like a few internal documents and stuff like that. But I try to keep my actual machine as clutter free as possible and just run directly to a nice fast SSD. So
I have nightmares about losing all of my files.
Yeah, me too. Backup. Do you use Backblaze?
I use Time Machine. I've got this. I forgot the brand, but it's like a Time Machine backup. Yes. So it'll back up my computer once a day. So, and then the external
to the cloud, or
what was that?
Like a cloud backup as well?
No, it's not a cloud backup. It's it's like a actual thick hard drive. That's I think it's like a terabyte.
Right. Yeah. I do Time Machine, and then I also use Backblaze, which any listeners out there, if you haven't heard of Backblaze,
I haven't.
$50 a year or thereabouts, and it continually backs up your machine and all your drives to the cloud.
Backblaze.
And I had my time machine fail once, and I had to use it, and it was like an absolute lifesaver.
Oh shit.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay.
It's so good. I mean, you obviously need decent upload speed for it. You can set it to just back up overnight.
Okay.
But oh man, it's just like so reassuring. I never worry about like anything corrupting now, because I essentially have 2 backups, 1 in the cloud. So yeah.
This episode brought to you by True to Grit Texture Supply.
Yeah. I'm not an affiliate. I do not get paid for that. Yeah, so you can see, so I mean, basically then I like get these vector files into, copy them into Photoshop. I just do it by hand. I don't try and export stuff in layers. It's too much dicking around.
I was just about to ask you that, because we had Fugestrator on the pod a few weeks ago, and he was saying he went from Illustrator and opened up the Illustrator file in Photoshop and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can do that now. This illustration is probably like 5 years old. I think I did this when I first moved to LA. So I think Photoshop, like the export functions and like the ability to open Illustrator files in layers in Photoshop are a lot better now, but I still like to do it manually. I don't know, my old school screen printing background is just like everything is like my file sizes match. I've got crop marks and registration, and everything just kind of locks in place. So I have a pretty good process for that. But
there you go.
Spacebar, what is that? Oh yeah, okay. So I mean, you can see it's like it's all kind of in
layers.
These are all the vector layers, and then they've all been distressed separately. I think I actually used.
Did you use
True Grit
distress press?
I did.
I used that thing like a motherfucker.
Yeah, I kind of have my own my own little sort of version of that, like a few presets that I've just like tweaked a little bit and duplicated, and just like real quick and dirty for like rather than going through the whole custom process. But so I distress all of them. You can see like, it's a lot more rough and detailed.
That's just something that just
isn't overall
aesthetic. You almost like, that's something that is so apparent, but you could never imagine like zooming in all the way down into the thing and realizing what really goes into making a whole composition look like it pulled out of a 1960s newspaper.
This is a real treat. I've got a massive design boner right now.
I mean, I think one of the big things too that I discovered with vector work too is like using the width brush tool on strokes like this, so they don't look completely uniform. So it looks like it's been hand painted with a brush. I mean, like a lot of the time now, like I'll do this in Photoshop with inking brushes, but for something like this that has to be so clean and straight,
of course,
there's no easy way to draw a straight line like that in Photoshop. Procreate's maybe a little bit better for doing that, but and Clip Studio, but I mean, that's a really good trick for sure. But yeah, it's just like a lot of this is just like slowly adding texture and masking, and where are we? Where's all these little control panel? Yeah, you can see like everything's kind of masked.
That's cool.
Like all the textures are masked in there. So like using clipping masks, that's like a really big thing for me. I mean, all the tutorials that come with a lot of the True Grit products, they all have a fair bit of detail about using clipping masks at a pretty basic level. Because I I remember when I first learned about clipping masks, I learned them from a fashion photo retoucher in Vancouver, and it was like mind blowing to me at the time. It was just like, oh man, why have I been doing this the hard way for so long?
I feel that.
It's always those things that just make your 5-hour design process turn into something you could do in a few minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's really it. I mean, there's not like, like I said, I pasted the weed leaves in there as reference, and then redrew over the top with a brush, and then, God, man, I probably, looking at that, I would say I distressed that as well.
Yeah, looks like it.
The grid ended up getting reused as grid paper that got distressed. I mean, it's pretty much all True Grit textures in here, actually. There's probably a couple of my own private stash in here, but yeah. Putting a little off-white grade over the top is a nice way to unify your colors, because everything has that sort of 15% yellow running through it. So it kind of helps bring it all together.
You got that dead subtle paper on there?
I might. Yeah, I probably do. Yeah.
Cam is just like, oh.
Is it actually named in there? Can you see that in the layers? Name that somewhere. Oh yeah, dead subtle. There we go.
I didn't even honestly, I didn't even see that. To be completely honest, I use dead subtle sometimes. So
yeah, it's great. It's like one of my. It's like not one of our best-selling brush sets. But it is so useful.
Oh, so useful. Even that record layer, I'll use it. I'll use it for a project here and there. But yeah, dude, no, it's a very useful tool.
Yeah, I don't know if I've even got that saved in here. Let me just import them.
Dead subtle. There you go. Boom.
There we go. There we go. Yeah, so you got like, I mean, I really like these like
yeah.
Oh, where are we? Oh. Oh, there's a mask there. Oh no. So I'm trying to put it over the mic. Yeah, okay. So yeah, like it's almost like instant paper texture, right? And they just kind of blend together, so you can just like stamp it on there so quickly, and now you got that. And then if you flick it around to white, you change your foreground color to white. It's like such a quick and dirty way to do it. I really like it. All right, so one more. So here's the cautionary tale part of the story. So I got approached. I've done some, I think maybe this was my first work with Pearl Jam, but Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam, he was doing a tour. He was playing this show in, I want to say, it was like on a prancing horse ranch in, we'll find out in a second when I open up the pitch document. But so it was Pilgrimage Fest in, oh wow, where are we here? Oh, I'm gonna have to open this in some other way.
If you just left click it, you can go open with.
Yeah.
At the top. Yep. And then you can go wherever.
Preview.
No, you go like there we go.
Yeah, so it's like Pilgrimage Festival in Tennessee. So it's on this old like prancing, I don't know what they're actually called, but it's like this style of like show horsing. Where like even the horses get all they've got like decorations on their ankles, stuff like that, and it's like a prancing horse. I don't know, it's super weird, but anyway, Eddie was doing the show there, and the brief was it has to be something to do with the venue. We like 1000% want this to like really be reflective of the venue.
Okay.
And I just kind of came up, I just thought it would be like quite cool to have like a very off the wall idea to have Eddie sitting on like a wooden rocking horse with his ukulele and just like almost like riding into the festival on a wooden rocking horse, which obviously you can't do. I don't know. It just tickled my humor bone quite a lot. And I thought I was a genius. And you know, I mean, this is kind of like how I pitched it, like these old kind of like prize horse illustrations. And, you know, some references here from other gig posters and like one of my own works. And to say Eddie was not into it would be an understatement. Not into it at all. Very much not into it. Like he was just like, this is not like my vibe. And I kind of realized pretty quickly that they basically miss like the, I don't know, like what it should have been was like the brief probably should have been like, make it something to do with the venue, but make sure there's a skull in there somewhere, because that's kind of like, you know, to look back at like Eddie's posters now, like his solo stuff, it's always sort of like a skeleton riding a skateboard or something like that, because he's kind of got this like coastal surfer skater, you know, old guy cruiser skateboard vibe, and that's just kind of his brand. And you know, I guess the cautionary tale is I didn't pick up on that. I probably shouldn't have paid attention to the brief so much, and I shouldn't have worked this up in such detail. You know, I definitely went way too, I mean, you can see this. I mean, it's almost like
basically like finished.
It's like one step away from inking, you know, because I wanted to be confident in my mind that I could get Eddie's likeness right, and that the horse would be right. And, you know, I kind of felt like it wouldn't make sense selling this concept into them without really drawing it up pretty convincingly. And you know, at the end of the day, the concept wasn't right for them. And I sort of spent 3 days on this concept that could have been spent on an extra 2 concepts. So I kind of went, you know, like I kind of used all my time that was allotted for this project and sort of had to bow out in the end. And a good friend of mine in Sydney ended up doing the poster, Ben Brown, and he is Mental Ben on Instagram.
Okay.
And, you know, he did a killer job of it. He kind of did like a, you know, old school Grateful Dead style poster. That's very much his vibe. He's like, you know, Ben's stuff is amazing. He's been doing gig posters for, you know, bands like Pearl Jam since the 90s. Like he was literally doing artwork for the Big Day Out tour in the 90s. So, you know, it was great that he ended up doing it. But cautionary tale, you know, do what I did, like, you know, do that rough sketch, like what I did for Pace magazine. Oh, what have I done there? Sorry, I was trying to plug in my machine, not my Wacom tablet. There we go. I did charge up. Cautionary tale. But, you know, look, you know, at the end of the day, this led me to doing, you know, more work for Pearl Jam, which I was super stoked about, you know,
that's awesome.
It's all like, it's worth, with projects like that, it's not about the money. You know, and look, you can make good money off selling gig posters to Pearl Jam fans, for sure. There's not a lot of bands in the world that you can do that with, but, you know, I mean, that project, you know, even though it didn't go ahead, it led to, you know, doing this poster for Pearl Jam and actually going to Chicago for the show. And, you know, it was awesome. It was like, you know, childhood dream come true. You know, I'm a 90s kid, so I grew up idolizing Pearl Jam and the Smashing Pumpkins and Nirvana and all of that stuff. So just to get to do a poster for one of those bands was amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
What a cool thing to be able to go through your work. Like I'm so appreciative that you were able to open up some of your working files and share with us the inner workings of yourself and your designs. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there we go.
No problem. Yeah, it's kind of cool to go back and look at it yourself, actually. It's like sometimes like that Paste magazine thing, I can't believe how much work went into that now when I look at it. But you know, that's one of my favorite like commercial jobs that I've done over the last 5 years even. I mean, so most of my time now is spent on True Grit, so I don't get to do a lot of editorial work anymore. But it's hard to say. I'm sure I would have another favorite editorial job if I was doing more of that work by now. But that one definitely sticks in my mind.
Perfect.
That's amazing, man.
Well, before we go, is there something that you want to leave everyone watching with? And first off, just tell everyone where they can find you, where they can get some of your tools and brushes, and then anything that you want to leave them with.
I guess you can find my personal work, kindredstudio.net. I am at Kindred _ studio on Instagram, and then TrueGritTextureSupply.com for brushes and textures and plugins and stuff like that. And then at True Grit Texture Supply on Instagram as well. Yeah.
Sponsor us. No, I had to throw that one in there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, let's do it.
I always make the joke of different tools that we use and who we're comfortable with and all that stuff. It's like, hey, sponsor us. So, but that's always been like a running joke for Pentool Pals. But
yeah, totally. Hey, you gotta put it out there. You gotta
put it out there in the universe,
manifest that shit. As the kids on Instagram say.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, Andrew, hey man, thank you so much for coming on Pentool Pals and sharing your knowledge, sharing your work. We really, really appreciate it. This has been a true pleasure, a true grit pleasure. So thank you so much for being a pal.
Boom, boom. Yeah, thanks guys. Yeah, it was really fun. It was thanks for listening to me ramble.
Hey, perfect. Usually it's me.
Yeah, awesome.
Everyone's got to ramble sometimes, right?
Yeah, thanks for being a pal.
Awesome.
We'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys. Have a good week.
Thank you for being a pal.
What's up, pals? Thank you so much for watching another episode of Pentool Pals. Hey, do us a favor. Don't be like a nightmare client and go hit that subscribe button. Make everyone's day just so much better and make our job easier and help us grow the channel. Hey, thanks.